Congressman Dan Crenshaw has had a fascinating career so far. Knowing early on that he wanted to serve his country, he joined the Navy SEALs and went to combat in Afghanistan. After he was hit by an IED blast, he lost sight in his right eye, but that did not stop him from fighting for our country. After his injury, he went on to deploy 2 more times. First back to the Middle East in 2014, then to South Korea in 2016. Now he continues his service for the state of Texas on Capitol Hill. Here now to share his untold story, Representative Dan Crenshaw.
Just did a podcast this week, actually, with another fellow SEAL who has a podcast, and we were talking about this, and he had the same story. You know, it was 11 years old. He just decided, and that was it. Every decision we ever made from that point on was towards that goal, and it's a really common story in the SEAL teams. And I think the reason that is because the training is so brutal. It's so difficult to get through that you can't possibly do it unless you really don't give yourself a choice. Like, this is all you ever thought you would do. And so the idea of quitting, really, it's not even an option for us. You know, we know it's going to suck. We know that every minute it's going to be painful. We know that our bodies are going to fail us. But we know we don't have a choice. And you only know that if you've known it your whole life. But
you're 11 or 12 years old. What was it? Was it a person in your family or something that you saw in a movie or you read? What was it that made you aware of it in the first place?
I think the first book I read on the subject was Dick Marcinko's book. He was the founder of SEAL Team 6. He wrote a book called Rogue Warrior. It's a mix of fiction and nonfiction, but in any case, it's entertaining. And that hooked me right from the beginning. Yeah. And then I read more, and I saw more movies, and U.S. Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen. I think I'd already wanted to be in the SEAL teams by the time I saw that movie. But it just builds upon itself, and at first it's about a sense of adventure and wanting to go into combat and doing the hardest thing possible. And then as you mature, I think that the reasoning evolves, and it becomes more about patriotism and service, along with the adventure and the elitism of the SEAL teams.
Was there ever a moment, because I know young men who have made the cut, and I know young men who had the same dream that you had who didn't. Was there ever a moment when you thought during the process, I'm not going to make it?
Yes, but not because I would choose not to make it. So there was never a moment where I thought I would quit. There are certainly moments where you think you can fail, but that might be outside your control. So I did break my leg.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so my first time through BUD/S, I was making it. I made it through the first part of first phase, and we were in the middle of Hell Week, and my leg finally fractured on Tuesday of Hell Week. So
doing what?
Running miles and miles and miles with about a 200 to 300 pound boat on your head. Well, it eventually gets the best of you. So, that was a stress fracture that really turned into a fracture, and pushed through it as long as I could. But at a certain point, I felt it snap. We kept running through this particular sprint. We sat down for lunch, and I couldn't get back up from lunch. And then the instructors come and they ask you, are you hurt or are you injured? Because there's a difference.
Yeah.
If you're hurt and you're complaining, well, you're just quitting. That's, everybody's hurt. But if you're injured, okay, we might give you another chance. And we did an X-ray, and I was definitely injured. You could see a big crack in the bone, and so I had to wait 6 months and try it again.
What about when you got to Afghanistan? Were there moments when the whole experience it seemed, well, obviously it was very real, that you thought, this isn't what I thought about when I was 11 years old?
That's a good question. I don't think so. Again, I read so much about it. I was, the first book I read that I told you about, that was mostly about the Vietnam War, and that's a pretty brutal war. So the stories you hear there are frankly sometimes way worse than what we see in Afghanistan. And so no, I wasn't surprised. And by the time you get on deployment, this is my third deployment as well. By the time I got to Afghanistan, we have prepared for every possible contingency. There are no surprises, and so. When I was about 6 months into that deployment, I was hit by an IED blast, and it's hard to explain why you're prepared because you've never gone through this experience before, this explosion where it feels like you got hit by a truck as well as shot with a bunch of shotguns, and for good measure, maybe the people who shot you with a bunch of shotguns poured a bunch of Tabasco sauce all over your body. That's what getting blown up kind of feels like. There's nothing to prepare for that, but you do so much mental preparation in the sense of calming yourself and simply thinking about the next step. Like, what is the next rational step to take? Don't let your emotions take over. And for me, it was just, okay, I just felt my legs. and they were still there. So I knew I didn't step on it. I knew I'd been hit by something, and I knew that I shouldn't start getting up and screaming and, just doing something irrational. We have procedures for this, and it's the medic will come to you when they can after they've cleared a path, because there's an IED threat, of course. And there's no sense in letting your emotions take over. It's not useful. So we've learned how to harness that over time, and that's just how you react.
When did you realize that you had lost your sight in your eye?
When I woke up. So the way this played out, I was conscious the whole time when I got hurt. And I remember that whole experience, probably about 45 minutes. And I just thought I had dirt in my eyes. I really did. And I didn't want to believe anything else. It didn't even occur to me because I didn't have pain, frankly, in my face. I had a lot of pain in the rest of my body. And that's what I was focused on. I just assumed, wrongfully, of course, that there was no real damage to my eyes. I mean, this was a strange sense of a strange belief that was not rooted in any logic, but also allowed me to refrain from getting too anxious and too overly emotional. They put me out when I got into the medevac helicopter. They put me into a medically induced coma, which lasted for a few days at least, until I got to Germany, where they woke me up out of it. And I woke up to a tube coming out of my mouth. And, they told me my right eye was gone, and there was a very low chance that I would ever see out of my left eye again. But I didn't believe them. So again, that sense of disbelief recurred for days and days and weeks. And I assumed, oh, so you're saying there's a chance? Okay, well then I'll see again. That's how I thought about it. And that kept me sane, because I was hallucinating constantly. My optic nerve was still firing throughout this experience. So that went on for a while. It was literally living inside of a nightmare, because I would dream. If I did fall asleep for a few minutes, I would dream and then not be able to get out of that dream because I would see it still. I would see Afghanistan constantly around me. It was a very strange experience. Strange is one way to put it. But that's the, I don't know how to explain it except to say maybe God gave me the strength to believe the unbelievable so that I wouldn't have irreparable PTSD, because having that anxiety every single day of knowing you would never see again is really tough. It would be really tough, and I was thankful to have basically been able to compartmentalize that belief and assume the best scenario.
That's an incredible story. So, at what point did you? Just tell me about what's it like to get used to that, to having an eye, and your eye has something on it, right?
Yeah. So as you can see right now, I'm wearing my Trident eye. And I've got like 10 of these, if you follow me on social media, you see every once in a while, I unveil some new fun, like glass eye. And, I've got a Texas eye. I've got like a Captain America eye. I've got an American flag eye. I've got a
You
pirate
showed that
eye.
to Chris Evans, right?
Yeah. I was very excited. So that was cool. But, so what is that like, adapting to it? Adapting to one eye isn't all that hard. You just turn more. You just turn to the right more. And, there is a matter of depth perception, which takes some getting used to. That really affects you like from 0 to 6 feet. It doesn't affect what people thinks it affects. So it's hard to catch a baseball. If people are shaking my hand, I might miss that sometimes because of that close up. But overall, doesn't have a huge effect. My left eye is pretty badly damaged, though. Like I said before, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to see out of that again. And that's frankly a more difficult thing to live with every day. I have to put in a very specialized contact every day. It's got to have saline solution in it. It's a whole process. Only one company makes this particular contact. When I'm not wearing it, I wear glasses that are about half an inch thick, and they're frankly just difficult to see with. So I'm pretty blind. I have a cataract. I don't have a lens in my eye. My iris doesn't open and shut. The muscle is broken there. So I can't dilate my pupil. I have holes in my retina, scarring in my retina, so there's blind spots everywhere. But despite all that, it's fine. So you just gotta adapt.
Wow. I didn't realize the extent of the injury in your left eye as well. And you are such an optimistic, upbeat person. And obviously it's a testament to your upbringing, your family, your parents. You grew up in Texas. Give me a little sense of the support system around you.
Yeah. So like you said, I grew up in Texas. with a family that imbued certain values, which is, toughen up, take responsibility for yourself, don't feel sorry for yourself. And, where did I first learn that from? I guess both my parents. I lost my mom to cancer when I was 10. So she fought this battle for 5 years. And I can't recall a single time when she felt like a victim. I can't recall a single moment where I felt like she was complaining or feeling sorry for herself. It just didn't happen. And I can't remember a single moment where my dad indicated that he felt sorry for himself after she was lost. And not that he didn't show an extreme amount of emotion over it.
Sure.
For that loss, which he did, but it was there's a sense of adapting and overcoming, and that's a saying I steal from the SEAL teams: adapt and overcome. That's you apply that to everything, and that's a bit how I grew up too, and that is certainly the Texas way, in many respects. And so, but then my current or my former community in the SEAL teams. Sometimes it's still sad to say that, isn't it? I still misspoke. But my former community in the SEAL teams, it's very close-knit. We take very good care of each other. I think more so than most units in the military. Yeah. And so it's a one reason why in the special operations community, I think you see less health issues, less mental health issues, because that support system is extremely strong. Yeah. And it's good to see.
So what's all that like when you face you run for Congress, you're on Capitol Hill. It's a dog-eat-dog world in a lot of ways. Everybody around you is running for reelection almost 24/7. Mm-hmm. Is that hard?
Yeah. Well, it's all hard. Hard is relative, but it's interesting. It's a team sport, and it's also an individual sport, right? It's it's you've got your blue team and your red team, of course, but you've also got individuals who are really looking out for their own reelection campaign and what they ran on, and which is how it's supposed to be, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying this in any derisive way. Right. It is what it is. Every member is their own member. Like they run their own office. They have their own priorities. They answer to people who are in their district and really nobody else. And it does end up working that way, I think. I know a lot of people don't feel that it works that way. They feel that everybody is succumbs to the establishment, whatever that means, or whatever it is. But in the end, everybody, in my view, from what I see, everybody tends to do what they think will be most beneficial or be liked the most by their district, which is how it's supposed to be.
They're supposed to represent the people that sent them there.
Right.
What you talk about having the goal of being a SEAL when you were 10, 11 years old. What's the goal now?
Well, the short-term goals, there's long-term policy goals. I say short-term goals in this first term. I'm focused on border security. I'm focused on immigration reform. I'm focused on flooding issues, so infrastructure in the Houston area that would prevent future flooding disasters like we
were down there. We covered the floods there in Houston, rode around the neighborhoods on trucks that had water, up to the side of them, and saw that firsthand. And people there talked a lot about the infrastructure issue that allowed that to happen. Yeah. And the way that the flooding sort of was geared towards certain areas in order to take the brunt of it. They were sacrificed in some ways, some of those areas.
Yeah, and there was definitely a lot of talk about that. Not all of it's accurate. And what we're doing now is really doing a full regional study on what exactly needs to take place in order to prevent future flooding. A lot of theories out there that were thrown out within the 6 months to a year after Hurricane Harvey. Oh, there's too much cement, or they released the reservoir, and the Army Corps of Engineers flooded these people. Yeah. There wasn't a third reservoir built over here. All of these things. There's a small element of truth to all of them, but none of these things was the big culprit. You have to do a regional study, and then we have to look at what do we need to do here, and it's going to be a combination of better drainage, more detention facilities, maybe even underground tunnels. There are options that we're looking at, but it's got to be a comprehensive study of the whole watershed. And so that's happening now. It's going to take longer than people would like, unfortunately, but it is being funded, and the county's very serious about it. The federal government's very serious about it, and we're going to get it done. Because people need to know that if there's another storm like Harvey, which which was pretty unprecedented. Well, it's not unprecedented actually. A lot of people think it is, but it's not. But it's really bad, and it could happen again. But we need to be better prepared for it.
What about long term, Dan Crenshaw? What's you want to be a senator? You want to be the governor of Texas? Do you want to run for president?
I want to do as much as possible to serve the American people. So if that means moving up, it means moving up. I definitely don't have any plans right now. I think it's far too early right now. I'm focused on the next reelection for the 2nd district. But I won't rule anything out. In the long term, I care about an approach to governance. That's why I got in this, really. I believe in a conservative approach to governance where we ask ourselves simple questions when we're looking at a policy. Is this more freedom for people, or is it less freedom for people? Does this give more local control, and take advantage of our federalist structure, or does it put more control in a centralized authority where bureaucrats make all the decisions? Are we making decisions that have a basis in some kind of moral virtue? And I would put that moral virtue in the Judeo-Christian history that our country was founded on. We have to ask ourselves these questions. Are we doing policies that encourage personal responsibility, or are we implementing policies that encourage dependency on government? And so I think there's a certain approach that conservatives take, which is the right approach to governance. It's a responsible approach. It doesn't promise people everything. I find it really problematic, and we're seeing it more and more.
No, we certainly are.
Well, hey, I'll promise you all of these things, and you can vote for them. And that's the easiest thing in the world as a politician.
Does it worry you that because you come from that ideology, does it worry you that the country could slip into a very different format where everybody gets a lot of everything, free college, all kinds of advantages that are being offered to them?
It's only getting worse and worse. I think it's been happening for a long time. I think government has grown that way. Hey, I'll promise you this. Okay, well, you get them that. Now you got to promise them something else to win the next reelection.
And you can't take it away.
Right.
Ever.
No, you can't.
That's the problem.
And the thing I ask people is, why don't you treat the American people the way you would treat your own kids? If you love your kids, you teach them certain principles like personal responsibility, that you have to work hard for what you get, that I'm not going to give you everything. I'm not going to reward you for nothing. Okay, if you love your kids, that's how you teach them, because you want them to be successful. If you don't like your kids, what would you teach them? Well, we would teach them the exact opposite, that, hey, it doesn't matter. Your actions don't matter. There are no consequences. We'll give you whatever you need because you deserve it. It's your right. If you want it, it's your right. Okay, when you teach people that, you don't love them. Okay, you want them to be dependent on you. And I really worry about this, that we're teaching a whole generation of people to be dependent on government. And here's the thing, as a politician, if I promise people that I'm going to do things for them, that I'm going to fix their lives, well, then they're going to expect that their lives will be better. And then their lives don't get better because we forgot to tell them that only they can actually make their lives better. Government's job is not to do that. Government's job is to protect your inalienable rights, to create an infrastructure where you can thrive in. All right, and to create a rule of law and equality under the law and protect personal property rights so that you can compete, so that if you're mentally tough enough and you enjoy your freedom enough, you can prosper. That's government's role. And if we want to have a basic safety net to prevent people from truly falling down, I think that's perfectly fine. But I think we've gone way beyond that. And we're creating a bunch of people who have become resentful because we told them government could solve their problems. It couldn't solve their problems. And now they hate each other for it. And this is really, I think that contributes quite a bit to the divisiveness that we're seeing right now.
You think President Trump will win another term?
Oh, well, I'm hoping he does, because I don't want these policies that are being proposed by the left to come into place. I think everything I just said times 10 is what we're looking at in the 2020 election when you're talking about a Green New Deal and Medicare for all. It's free college, free federal jobs, whatever even that means. And it's the problems I laid out a second ago times 10. And so I hope Trump wins this second term. If Democrats keep going as radical as they are, I think he's got a pretty good shot.
What about Joe Biden? You think he can give the president a run for his money?
Maybe. He's the most likely to appeal to your centrist voters out of all the Democrats, because, again, the Democrats are tripping over themselves, running more and more radically left. But Biden is going to feel some pressure to do that in order to win that primary, I think. And so then he's going to have to answer for that in the general. Like, hey, do you really believe this? Mm. And also, I think he's going to have to answer for this, for this fact that, listen, he was in charge before, okay? And and there was some resentment because of how the economy was doing. It was moving too slowly. Trump took charge, and there's been a very different change. So Trump can make an argument by simply asking people, is your life better off now or before? All right, no matter how much you dislike me, how much you can't deny that life is better right now. The economy is doing better. Wages are going up. There's more jobs. There's no new wars going on. They're trying to make peace with North Korea. You know, we're trying to use our foreign policy tools in the right way, which I think he deserves some credit for. You know, really, what is worse? And Joe Biden's going to have to claim that things were better before, and I think that's a pretty hard claim to make.
Congressman Dan Crenshaw, thank you. Pleasure talking with you. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.